remember the cold. Not the kind that nips at your fingers or makes you shiver. The kind that reaches into your chest and squeezes until you can't breathe. The kind that took my mother. Right now, standing in this cabin with my 3 siblings pressed against my legs, I smell that same cold on the woman who saved us, Olivia Warren. Her hands shake as she faces the 2 men in uniform at her door, Parks and Wildlife, their badges say. Their guns hang heavy at their sides. "Ma'am, we have a report of wolves on this property." The woman, my mother, now, in every way that matters, steps forward. Her arthritis makes her slow, but her voice doesn't waver. "They're mine. They're wild animals, Mrs. Warren." Behind me, Ember whimpers. Phoenix's growl rumbles low. Aria presses closer. 48 hours. That's all we had. Now time's up. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Let me take you back 6 months before those uniforms appeared at our door, before everything changed, before I understood what family truly meant. My name is Silas. I'm a wolf, though I didn't always know what that meant. What I knew at 3 weeks old was cold, hunger, fear, and the absence of my mother. The woman I would come to love saved me that November morning, but she was dying too, just slower, in a different way. Olivia Warren. 67 years old when our lives collided. I learned these things by watching, by listening. Wolves are observers. We have to be. She lived alone in a cabin 12 miles outside Nederland. Colorado, the nearest neighbor, an elderly woman named Ruth Calloway, lived 3 miles away through forest so thick you could disappear into it. Maybe that's why Liv chose it. I watched her those first weeks when she thought I was sleeping. Watched her stare at a photograph of a man, her husband, Tom. I learned from her whispered conversations with his image. Dead 3 years? Cancer, she said. The word tasted bitter in the air. She had a daughter, Sarah. 42 years old and might as well have lived on another planet, for all Liv saw her. 6 months since the last phone call. I could smell the pain of that abandonment on Liv's skin, sharp and acrid like old wounds that never healed. The cabin was too big for one person, too quiet, too full of ghosts. Every morning, the same routine. Liv would wake at 6, make coffee she didn't drink, take pills from bottles with long names I couldn't read, and sit at the kitchen table counting money that never seemed enough. Bills stacked in piles. Red ink everywhere, numbers that made her hand shake. She'd been an ER nurse, 40 years at Denver General Hospital, saved hundreds of lives, maybe thousands. Then mandatory retirement at 65 because some rule said she was too old to matter anymore. Too old to save lives. Too old to be needed. Her Social Security check, $1,200 a month. Her mortgage, $1,200 a month. The math didn't work even for a wolf who couldn't count. She had arthritis in both knees, high blood pressure that made her tired, and loneliness the kind that smells like slow death. When I opened my eyes that first morning in her cabin, wrapped in warm towels by her fireplace, I saw something in her face I recognized. We were the same, she and I, both abandoned, both surviving, both wondering if survival was enough. It wasn't, but neither of us knew it yet. The night my mother died, the temperature dropped to 10 below zero. The first major snowstorm of the season hit the Rocky Mountains like a fist, and we were too young to understand what it meant. 3 weeks old, eyes barely open, deaf to everything except vibration and the warmth of our mother's body. She left the den that evening to hunt. 4 pups needed feeding, and her milk was running dry from the stress of early winter. I remember, though memory at that age is more feeling than image, the sudden absence of warmth, the cold creeping in through the entrance of our rock cave. We waited. Aria, the largest of us, tried to keep us together in a pile. Phoenix whimpered. Ember, the smallest, barely moved, and I pressed close, listening for the sound of our mother's return. It never came. What I learned later, pieced together from human conversations I wasn't supposed to understand, a hunter, a man named Frank Hutchinson, a rifle shot in the dark. Our mother died instantly, her body left in the snow 2 miles from our den. But that night, we only knew absence. 48 hours we waited. Wolf pups can survive 2 days without food if they stay warm. But the temperature kept dropping. The snow kept falling. And eventually, hunger and cold drove us from the only home we'd known. Aria led. She always led. Even at 3 weeks old, barely able to walk straight, she understood we had to move or die. Phoenix followed because he always followed Aria. Ember came because she had no choice. And I brought up the rear, already the observer, already watching. We didn't get far. Maybe a quarter-mile through snow that came up to our bellies. Our legs weren't strong enough. Our bodies weren't ready. We were supposed to stay in the den for another 3 weeks at least, nursing, growing, preparing for the world. Instead, we stumbled through a nightmare of white and cooked and confusion. I don't know how we found the cabin, Pierre. Luck, instinct, bâtonnasse to desperation. We followed lights, because lights meant warmth, and warmth meant survival. The parking area near Liv's cabin was gravel, partially cleared. We collapsed near the woodpile, our bodies giving up simultaneously. Ember went first, just stopped moving, her breathing shallow. Phoenix tried to stay alert, but his eyes kept closing. Aria pressed against us, trying to share body heat she didn't have, and I felt myself slipping away, the cold finally winning. I remember thinking, if a 3-week-old wolf can think that this was how it ended, cold, alone, forgotten, then light, sound, movement, a door opening, footsteps crunching through snow, a human voice, sharp with surprise. Oh my God! I couldn't see clearly. Everything was blurred, fading, but I felt hands gentle, careful lifting me, warmth against my body, the smell of something I'd never encountered, human skin, coffee, lavender soap. Olivia Warren carried me inside first, wrapped me in a towel, placed me near a fireplace. Then she went back for the others, one by one. Aria, Phoenix, Ember last, because Ember was barely breathing and needed the most care. I watched through half-closed eyes as this old woman, though I didn't know she was old then, didn't understand human age, knelt on her floor surrounded by 4 dying wolf pups. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. She rubbed us with towels, stimulating circulation. She checked our breathing, our heartbeats. She pulled out a phone, called someone, her voice urgent but controlled. I need puppy formula, the emergency kind, and heating pads, 4 of them. A pause. I don't know what breed. They were abandoned in the snow. They're dying. Another pause. Longer. 20 minutes. Make it 15. She hung up, looked at us, at 4 tiny, helpless creatures she'd found by accident on a morning she probably would have rather stayed in bed. I saw something in her face that I recognize now but couldn't name then. Recognition. She saw herself in us, abandoned, cold, waiting to die. Not today, she whispered, more to herself than us. Not today. She spent that night on the floor beside the fireplace, wrapped in blankets, keeping watch every 2 hours. She fed us with bottles formula mixed with warm water, coaxing our mouths open, teaching us to suckle. She monitored our breathing. She kept us warm. Ember nearly died twice. Her breathing stopped, and Liv performed some kind of rescue technique, stimulating breathing into Ember's tiny nose until the smallest of us gasped and lived. Dawn came. We survived. Liv looked at us in the morning light, exhausted, her arthritis screaming from hours on the hard floor, and she smiled. I hadn't seen anyone smile in my short life, but I understood it. It was the opposite of cold. It was hope. The third night, Liv gave us names. That's when I understood we weren't temporary. We were hers, and she was ours. She sat on the floor with us, 4 squirming bodies that had gained strength from 2 days of constant care. We were still weak, still small, but alive in a way that seemed impossible 72 hours earlier. "You need names," she said, talking to us like we understood. Maybe she was lonely enough that she didn't care if we did. "Can't keep calling you the puppies." She picked up Aria first, my sister, always the first to wake, the first to cry for food, the one who organized us even at 3 weeks old. "Aria," Liv said, running her finger down my sister's silver-white fur, "because you always sing first. Every morning, before the others, you cry out, like an aria starting an opera." Aria licked her finger. Liv's eyes filled with tears, happy ones. I would learn to distinguish. Phoenix came next, already showing the reddish-brown coat that would define him. He squirmed in her hands, always moving, always fighting to be stronger. "Phoenix," she said, "because you're a fighter. You nearly died that first night, stopped breathing twice, and came back both times, like a phoenix from ashes." Then Ember, the smallest, the weakest, the one Liv worried about most, cream-colored fur, huge eyes, a tendency to burrow into the warmest spot she could find. "Ember," Liv whispered, holding my youngest sister close. "Small but warm. You curl up right against my heart every night, like a little ember keeping me warm." Finally, she picked me up. I was the quiet one, the watcher. Even then, I spent more time observing than participating. My gray-black coat made me easy to lose in shadows. Liv looked into my eyes, really looked, and something passed between us. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. "Silas," she said. "It means of the forest, but also those eyes. You see everything, don't you? You understand more than you should." She was right. I did. The routine became our world. Every 2 hours, feeding, bottles of formula that Liv mixed carefully, testing the temperature on her wrist like the nurse she'd been. Phoenix always ate fastest, gulping so fast he'd choke. Aria ate steadily, methodically. Ember needed coaxing, gentle encouragement, and I watched them all, learning, between feedings. We slept in a pile near the fireplace. Liv kept it burning constantly those first weeks, despite the cost of firewood she couldn't afford. I heard her on the phone once, arguing with the bank about extending her payment deadline. She hung up and looked at us. "Worth it," she said. She talked to us constantly about her husband Tom, dead 3 years but alive in every story, about her daughter Sarah, who hadn't called since summer, about her 40 years in the ER, the lives saved and lost, the weight of all those memories. You know what the hardest part is, she asked us one night, week 2, while we nursed our bottles. It's not the dying. In ER, you make peace with death. It's the living that's hard, waking up every day and finding a reason to keep going. She looked at us, 4 pairs of eyes watching her. But I guess I have 4 reasons now. By week 3, we were growing fast, too fast, though Liv didn't seem to notice. We doubled in size. Our teeth were coming in sharp, longer than they should be. Our legs were stronger, our movements more coordinated, and we started making different sounds. Phoenix tried to bark once, copying sounds from a neighbor's dog we could hear in the distance. It came out wrong, not a bark, something else, something wild. Liv's face changed when she heard it, just for a moment. Fear flickered across her features, then she shook her head. "Husky mix," she muttered. "That's all. Some breeds sound different." But she knew I could smell the knowing on her, sour and sharp. She just wasn't ready to face it. Ruth Calloway visited us that week, the neighbor from 3 miles away, 72 years old, sharp as a tack. She took one look at us, and her eyebrows rose. "Liv, what kind of dogs did you say these were?" "Husky mix. Someone abandoned them." Ruth knelt down, examined us with knowing eyes. She touched Phoenix's oversized paws, looked at the structure of our faces, the shape of our ears. "Honey," Ruth said carefully, "I grew up in Montana." "I've seen a lot of huskies." Liv's hands clenched. "Ruth." "I'm not saying anything," Ruth interrupted. "I'm just saying, if someone asked me what these were, I might need some time to figure out the right answer." The 2 women looked at each other, understanding passed between them. "They're mine," Liv said, her voice hard in a way I'd never heard. "I saved them. They're mine." Ruth smiled. "Of course they are, dear. Of course they are." After Ruth left, Liv sat with us for a long time. She picked up each of us, one by one, looking into our eyes. When she got to me, she whispered, "I know what you are. I've known since the first morning. But I don't care, Book. Do you hear me? I don't care." I licked her chin. It was all I could do. "Everyone I've ever loved has left me," she said, tears falling now. "Death or distance, doesn't matter. They all leave. So if the world wants to take you too, they'll have to go through me first." It was the night I understood she wasn't just saving us. We were saving her. Late January. 2 months in Liv's cabin. We'd grown from helpless pups into something she could no longer deny, though she tried. I was now 35 pounds. Phoenix pushed 40. Even Ember, our runt, weighed 28 pounds more than any 8-week-old dog should. Our teeth were fully developed, canines stretching 2.5 inches. Our paws were massive, our legs long and powerful. And at night, when the moon rose full over the mountains, Phoenix would lift his head and trew a sound that echoed through the forest like a song older than memory. Liv heard it. I watched her face every time, the fear, the denial, the desperate hope that maybe, somehow, we were just unusual dogs. We weren't. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. Unexpected, urgent. Liv opened the door to find a woman in her 40s, belly round with pregnancy, though not obviously so, face tight with stress and something else. Anger, maybe, or hurt. Hi, Mom. Sarah Warren, the daughter, the one who'd abandoned Liv just as thoroughly as someone had abandoned us. Sarah, Liv's voice was flat, careful. What are you doing here? Can I come in? Liv stepped aside. Sarah entered. Stopped immediately when she saw us sprawled across the living room. 4 large animals, clearly not dogs, watching this stranger with intelligent, wary eyes. What? Sarah's voice caught. What are those husky mixes? Liv said automatically. The lie was practiced now. Smooth. Mom? Sarah turned, and I saw tears in her eyes. Those aren't dogs. They're mine. That's not what I asked. The 2 women stared at each other, years of unspoken words hanging between them like smoke. Sarah spoke first. I came because the bank contacted me. Oh, you listed me as emergency contact on your mortgage documents. She pulled papers from her purse. You're 3 months behind. They're foreclosing. $45,000. Mom, where did all your money go? Liv glanced at us, at the empty bags of dog food in the corner, the veterinary supplies, the heating bills from keeping the cabin warm enough for growing wolves. I'm managing, Liv said. You're not managing. You're drowning. Sarah's voice cracked. I found an assisted living facility in Denver. It's nice, Mom, really nice. They have no. Mom, you can't take care of yourself. I said no. Liv's voice was steel. I'm not going to some facility to sit around waiting to die. Then what's your plan? Lose your house, live on the street. I'll figure it out. With them. Sarah gestured at us, her voice rising. With 4 giant dogs or whatever they are, that you can barely afford to feed. Aria growled, low and warning. She didn't like the tone. Neither did Phoenix, who stood, positioning himself between Liv and Sarah. Sarah stepped back, frightened. Mom, they're aggressive. They're protective. There's a difference. This is insane. Sarah was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. I came here to help you, and you're choosing animals over your own daughter. You haven't called in 6 months. Liv's voice finally broke, years of hurt spilling out. 6 months. Sarah, not a single call, love. Not a text, nothing. You want to talk about choosing? You chose to leave me alone long before I found them. Because you never needed me. And Sarah shouted back, you never needed anyone after Dad died. I tried. I tried so hard to be there for you, but you pushed me away. I'm fine. Sarah, I don't need help. Sarah, you were always so strong, so independent. You made it very clear you didn't need your daughter. The words hung in the air, heavy and true. Liv's face crumpled. I didn't know how to need anyone. My mother taught me that needing people makes you weak. So I learned to be strong. So strong I pushed away the only person I had left. Sarah wiped her eyes. Why them? Mom, why can you let these wolves need you, but not your own daughter? Because they can't leave, Liv whispered. They depend on me completely. They won't grow up and move away and stop calling. They won't get tired of me. They need me every single day, and that, her voice broke, that's the only thing keeping me alive. The confession fell like a stone into still water. Sarah's anger drained away, replaced by something worse. Understanding and hurt. "I'm pregnant," Sarah said quietly. Liv's head snapped up. "What, 5 months? I wanted to tell you, but—" Sarah touched her belly. "I didn't think you'd care." "Of course I care." Do you?" "Because I came here hoping you'd want to be part of your grandchild's life. Hoping maybe this would fix us." Sarah looked at us again. "But I can see where your priorities are." She moved toward the door. "Sarah, wait. I have the papers for the assisted living facility. They need an answer by next week." Sarah's voice was hollow now, distant. "I can't watch you lose everything, Mom. If you won't save yourself, I have to do it for you. You want to put me in a home and take away my family. I want my mother back." Sarah's voice cracked completely. "The one who used to sing while cooking, the one who laughed, the one who hugged me and told me everything would be okay. That mother, not this. This shell who'd rather live with wolves than her own daughter." She left. The door closed with terrible finality. Liv stood frozen for a long moment. Then she sank to the floor, and we surrounded her immediately, all 4 of us, pressing close, offering the only comfort we knew how to give. "What have I done?" Liv whispered into Arya's fur. "What have I become?" The next week spiraled. Liv barely ate. She went through the motions, feeding us, letting us out, basic care, but the light had gone out of her. I watched her stare at photos of Sarah as a child, at the phone that never rang, at the papers for the assisted living facility that Sarah had left on the table. The bills kept coming, red ink everywhere. Final notices. Threats of legal action. Then Arya got hurt. It happened during a fight with Phoenix. Dominance issues, natural in growing wolves. Arya was alpha. But Phoenix challenged her constantly. That day, it escalated. Phoenix lunged. Arya countered, and his teeth caught her shoulder wrong. Deep gashes, bleeding heavily. Liv had been treating minor theater injuries herself. She was a nurse, after all. But this was beyond her supplies. This needed a vet. At 2 a.m, Liv wrapped Arya in blankets and carried her to the car. I insisted on coming, wouldn't leave my sister. Liv didn't have the strength to argue. The emergency veterinary clinic was 40 minutes away. Liv drove through snow, tears streaming down her face, whispering prayers to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Ellen Rodriguez was on duty. A woman in her mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, kind eyes that turned sharp the moment she saw Arya. "Mrs. Warren, Doctor." Ellen's voice was carefully neutral. "This is the husky mix you called me about in December." "Please," Liv begged, "just help her." Ellen examined Arya, professional and thorough. Then she turned to Liv, and I saw the resemblance, something in the eyes, the set of the jaw. "Mrs. Warren, this is a wolf." "You know that." Liv said nothing. "I'm legally required to report this to Colorado Parks and Wildlife within 24 hours. Then my wolves die." Liv's voice was flat, dead. "They'll take them and euthanize them. That's what happens to wolves in captivity without permits." "Mrs. Warren, I found them dying in the snow, 3 weeks old. Their mother was dead. I saved them. I raised them. They're mine." Liv's voice gained strength. You can report me. You can follow your law, but save her first. Please, save her first. Dar. Ellen looked at Liv for a long moment, at me, sitting quietly at Liv's feet, at Arya, bleeding on the exam table. My father, Ellen said quietly, was Dr. Richard Coleman. The name hit Liv like a physical blow. I saw her stagger. Denver General, 40 years ago. You were the ER nurse who held his hand when he died. You comforted a 12-year-old girl who just lost her father. You told me, never waste the life someone gave you by loving you. Liv's face went white. Ellen, little Ellen Coleman. I became a veterinarian because of that day, because you showed me that saving lives any lives matters more than rules. Ellen looked at Arya. My father, 5 years ago, left me money for someone worthy, someone who understood what he taught. Ellen began treating Arya's wounds. Her hands were steady, professional. This will cost about $8,000. Treatment, antibiotics, monitoring. I don't have Liv started. My father's money covers it, but Mrs. Warren, I still have to report this. The law is clear. I have 24 hours. The clock started ticking. 16 hours later, Arya was stable. Ellen had worked through the night, and Liv had stayed beside her, holding my sister's paw, whispering apologies and promises. I stayed too, watching, understanding more than I should. Ellen sat down beside Liv as dawn broke through the clinic windows. I've contacted the Wolf Conservation Center. There might be a way, a legal way, to keep them special wildlife care permit for animals that can't be released into the wild because they're too habituated to humans. Hope flickered in Liv's eyes. But it's complicated, expensive, requires lawyers, facility modifications, inspections, at least $15,000. The hope died. And, Ellen continued, it takes 6 to 8 weeks to process. Parks and Wildlife will be here, and she checked her watch. 7 hours. So there's no way. I didn't say that. Ellen pulled out her phone. I've already filed the emergency permit application. Sent it at 4 this morning. But Mrs. Warren, you need to understand something. Even if by some miracle they approve it, you can't do this alone anymore. You need a help. You need community. You need your daughter. Liv flinched. When my father died, I pushed everyone away too. Took me 10 years to realize needing people isn't a weakness. It's being human. Ellen stood. Parks and Wildlife will be at your cabin this afternoon. I've done what I can. The rest is up to you. We drove home in silence. Arya recovering in the back, me watching Liv's face, seeing something I'd never seen before. Not fear, not denial, determination. The hours crawled. Parks and Wildlife would arrive at 2 o'clock. It was 9 in the morning. Liv sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by bills she couldn't pay, legal papers for a facility she didn't want, and 4 wolves she couldn't keep, the mathematics of impossible choices. Her phone rang. Ruth Calloway. I heard, Ruth said without preamble. Ellen called me. I'm coming over. Ruth, you don't have to. Child, I'm 72 years old and bored out of my mind. Let me help. Ruth arrived 30 minutes later, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than both of them combined. I was a lawyer for 40 years before Edmund died, Ruth said, spreading documents across Liv's table. Retired 15 years ago, but I still remember how to fight. There's nothing to fight. The law is clear. The law, Ruth said, her voice sharp with a lifetime of courtroom battles, is always clearer than it seems until you actually read it. Did you know Colorado has a provision for special wildlife care permits passed in 2019? Barely anyone uses it. Ellen mentioned it. Takes weeks to process. Usually. But there's an emergency clause for animals in immediate danger whose welfare is at risk. Ruth looked at Aria, still recovering. I'd say that qualifies. We don't have weeks, Ruth. We have 5 hours. Then we better work fast. Ruth made calls, lots of them, to former colleagues, judges she knew, wildlife officials who owed her favors from decades of legal work. Her voice on the phone was nothing like the gentle neighbor who brought soup. This was Ruth, the lawyer, sharp, demanding, relentless. Liv listened, hope and fear warring in her chest. At 11, Ruth hung up from her 6th call and smiled. We have a hearing, emergency review board, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Tomorrow, they're coming today. I know. I bought us 24 hours. The board member I spoke to, he owes me. I defended his son pro bono 10 years ago. He's putting pressure on Parks and Wildlife to delay until after the hearing. Liv's hands shook. What if we lose? Then we lose. But we'll have fought. Ruth gripped Liv's hand. Honey, I lost my husband and both my sons in one car accident, one drunk driver, 3 lives gone. I spent 15 years alone, just like you. I know what it's like to want to give up, but I also know what it's like to wish I'd fought harder for one more day with the people I loved. She looked at us, 4 wolves, watching this human drama with understanding we shouldn't possess. They love you, you love them. That's worth fighting for. At noon, another knock. Liv's stomach clenched, but it was too early for Parks and Wildlife. Sarah stood in the doorway, eyes red from crying. I saw Ruth's car, she said quietly. Is everything okay? No, Liv said honestly. Everything is not okay. They stared at each other. 20 years of distance in a single look. Sarah stepped inside, saw Ruth surrounded by legal documents, saw Aria with her bandaged shoulder, saw the clock ticking toward 2. What's happening? Liv told her everything. The permit application, the hearing tomorrow, the 24-hour reprieve that might mean nothing. When she finished, Sarah was quiet for a long moment. I started a petition last night, Sarah said finally. Online. Let Olivia keep her family. I posted your story how you found them dying, saved them, raised them, how they're all you have. Sarah, it has 50,000 signatures as of this morning. Sarah pulled out her phone, showed them. It's trending on social media. Save Olivia's wolves. People are angry. They want to help. Liv stared at the screen. Thousands of comments from strangers. This woman saved these animals. Family doesn't end with species. Let her keep them. I was angry at you, Sarah said, tears flowing now. So angry. But then I drove home and I thought about what you said, about learning to be strong, about not needing anyone. She touched her belly. I'm terrified of being a mother, terrified I'll mess it up like my mom messed up with me. Sarah, let me finish. I realized you didn't mess up. You survived. After Grandma, after Dad, after 40 years of holding dying people in your arms, you survived the only way you knew how, by being strong, by not needing. as Sarah knelt in front of Liv's chair. "But I need you, Mom. This baby needs you. And maybe it's okay to admit that you need us too. That you need these wolves. That needing isn't weakness." Liv broke. 40 years of holding strong. And she finally broke. She pulled Sarah into her arms and sobbed for Tom, for her mother, for all the years of loneliness, for the family she'd pushed away, for the wolves she was about to lose. Sarah held her and cried too. We watched, all four of us, understanding this was important, even if we didn't understand all the words. At 2:00, the Parks and Wildlife vehicles arrived. 3 men got out. The lead officer was in his 50s, solidly built, official expression. His name tag read, M. Stevens. Ruth met them at the door, legal papers in hand. "Gentlemen, I'm Ruth Calloway, legal representative for Mrs. Olivia Warren. I trust you received notification of tomorrow's emergency hearing." Stevens nodded, his face unreadable. "We did. We're here to assess the situation and ensure public safety until the hearing." "Of course, Mrs. Warren is cooperative and transparent." They entered. Stevens saw us immediately. 4 wolves, fully grown now, undeniably wild. His hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. "Easy," Liv said, stepping between Stevens and us. "They're not aggressive. Mrs. Warren, these are wild animals. They're family." Stevens looked at her, this 67-year-old woman standing defiantly between armed officers and 4 wolves. Something flickered in his face. "Olivia Warren," he said slowly. "Denver General Hospital." Liv blinked. "Yes, named I-20 major accident. I was 23. You performed an emergency tracheotomy on the side of the highway. Saved my life." The room went silent. Stevens stepped closer, and I tensed, ready to defend Liv. But his body language wasn't threatening. "You held my hand in the ambulance, told me I was going to be fine, told me I had too much life ahead of me to give up." He touched his throat where a faint scar showed. "You gave me 32 years I shouldn't have had." Liv's eyes widened with recognition. Mark Little, Mark Stevens. Not so little anymore. He smiled tattily. "Warren, I have a job to do. The law is clear about wolves in captivity. I know, but the law also has provisions, exceptions." He looked at us, at Arya's bandages, at how we stayed calm around Liv, but wary of strangers. "These wolves, they're imprinted on you. Anyone can see that. They can't survive in the wild now." He pulled out paperwork. "I'm documenting the situation. Medical condition of one animal," he gestured to Arya, "necessitates temporary housing with current caretaker. Public safety assessment, minimal risk, due to isolation of property and apparent behavioral conditioning." He looked at Ruth. "That gives you until the hearing, maybe a little longer, if I document thoroughly enough." A hint of a smile. "Very thoroughly." After they left, Sarah turned to Liv. "He's giving you time." "It might not matter. The hearing could still go against us. Then we make sure it doesn't." Sarah pulled out her laptop. "I'm a marketing director. Mom, I know how to run a campaign. By tomorrow morning, every news outlet in Colorado will know your story." She wasn't exaggerating. That evening, the first news van arrived, then another. By nightfall, drive more. Local news, Denver stations, even a national network. Sarah had crafted the narrative perfectly. Retired nurse who spent 40 years saving human lives now fights to save 4 wolves she rescued from death. Ruth coordinated the legal strategy. Sarah managed the media. And Liv just held us, her family of wolves, and waited for tomorrow. That night, lying together by the fireplace, Liv whispered to us, "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know you saved me. When Tom died, I thought my life was over, that I'd just exist until I didn't anymore. But you four, you gave me a reason. You gave me purpose. You gave me family." Ember curled closer. Phoenix rested his head on her leg. Arya pressed against her side. And I watched her face, memorizing this moment. Because tomorrow, everything would change. The hearing started at 9, but our world ended at 11 the night before. We were sleeping, all of us exhausted from the day's chaos, when the sound came, a crash outside, then another. The garbage cans by the side of the cabin thrown across the gravel. I was awake instantly. So were my siblings. Our instincts screamed danger even before our conscious minds processed the threat. Liv stumbled from her bedroom, confused and frightened. "What's happening?" The smell hit me first. Bear, grizzly, male. Hungry and aggressive, wrong for this time of year. Bears should be in their dens still, but this one was out, and it was angry. Through the window I saw it, massive, 7 feet tall when it stood on its hind legs, which it did now, testing the cabin door. 600 pounds of muscle, claws and teeth. Phoenix growled, deep and threatening. Arya positioned herself between the door and Liv. Ember, despite her injury, stood ready, and I calculated our odds. They were terrible. The bear slammed against the door. Wood cracked. Liv screamed, grabbed a kitchen knife, pathetic against what was coming. The door burst inward. The bear filled the doorway, its breath visible in the cold air, eyes reflecting the firelight. It saw Liv, saw prey. We attacked. I don't remember making the decision. Instinct took over, pack instinct, family instinct, the primal need to protect what's ours. Phoenix hit first, launching at the bear's face. His teeth found purchase on the sensitive muzzle, and the bear roared, shaking him off like a rag doll. Phoenix flew across the room, slammed into the wall with a sickening crack. Arya went for the legs, trying to hamstring, to slow it down. The bear kicked backward, caught her in the ribs. I heard bones break. Ember and I worked together, harrying from different angles, trying to confuse it, distract it from Liv. But we were outmatched. 4-month-old wolves against a full-grown grizzly. It was suicide. The bear advanced on Liv. She backed against the wall, nowhere to go, holding that useless knife. I threw myself between them, felt the bear's paw connect with my side, felt something tear, felt myself flying. Pain exploded through my left leg as I hit the ground. Through blurred vision, I saw the bear rear up, saw Liv beneath it, saw the end of everything. Then gunfire, 3 shots in rapid succession, not to kill the bear, barely flinched, but to distract, to scare. A man in the doorway, rifle raised, older, weathered face, eyes that had seen too much. He fired again, shooting into the air, into the ground near the bear's feet, making noise and chaos. The bear, confused and irritated, turned, saw a new threat, calculated, then, finally, fled back into the darkness. Silence fell. like snow. The man lowered his rifle, looked at the carnage, 4 injured wolves. One terrified woman, blood everywhere. Is anyone dead? His voice was rough, strained. Phoenix! Liv crawled to my brother, who lay too still against the wall. Oh, God! Phoenix! I dragged myself over, my legs screaming, put my nose to Phoenix's muzzle, felt breath, faint, but there. The man pulled out his phone, called someone. Ruth, it's Frank. Get to Liv's cabin now. Bring medical supplies. Bear attack. No, she's alive. The wolves. Yeah, all 4. Hurry. He hung up, knelt beside Phoenix, checked him with hands that knew what they were doing. Broken ribs, maybe internal bleeding. He needs a vet. Who are you? Liv's voice shook. The man looked at her. Really looked, and I saw something break in his face. My name is Frank Hutchinson, he said, and 3 years ago I killed these wolves' mother. The words hung in the air like poison. Liv stared. What? 3 years ago, my son Dylan, he was 17, to camping alone. Stupid kid thing. He found a wolf den, wanted to get closer, take pictures. The mother wolf attacked, killed him. Frank's voice cracked. I found my son's body. 4 wolf pups nearby, maybe 3 weeks old, and I shot their mother. Revenge, rage, murder. He looked at us, and I saw tears on his weathered face. I stood over those pups with my rifle loaded, was going to kill them too, finish it, but I couldn't. I left them there to die instead. Been carrying that guilt every day since. Liv's face was white. When I heard about a woman in Netherlands raising wolves, I had to know, had to see if they survived, if maybe. He touched Aria gently, checking her injuries, if maybe I could make it right somehow. You killed their mother? I did, and I've been tracking that bear for 2 days. It's sick, rabid maybe, acting wrong. I tried to warn you earlier, but he shook his head. I'm sorry for everything. For your mother, he said to us, though we couldn't respond, for leaving you to die, for not being strong enough to do the right thing then. Ruth burst through the broken door, medical supplies in hand. She took in the scene, didn't waste time with questions, just started working. Dr. Ellen arrived 20 minutes later. Summoned by Ruth, she set up a triage right there in the cabin. Phoenix. 2 broken ribs, severe bruising but alive. Aria cracked ribs, multiple lacerations, but stable. Ember. Miraculously, only minor injuries. Me torn, shoulder muscle, sprained left leg, but functional. Live unharmed, physically. Destroyed emotionally. She sat on the floor, watching Ellen work, watching Ruth coordinate, watching Frank. The man who killed our mother hold Phoenix steady, while Ellen examined him. Why did you save us? Liv asked Frank. Frank didn't look up from Phoenix. My son's last journal entry, found it after he died. He wrote, if something happens to me in the wild, it's not the animal's fault. We're in their home. I accept that risk. He finally met Liv's eyes. Dylan loved wolves, wanted to be a wildlife biologist. I dishonored his memory by killing your mother. I've spent 3 years hunting wolves, killed 12 of them total, became the monster I thought they were. His voice broke completely. Until I heard about you, about how you saved 4 pups. And I thought maybe this is how I make it right. Maybe this is how I honor my son, by saving the lives I destroyed. The hearing is in 10 hours, Ruth said quietly. Phoenix needs surgery. We need to move him. No time, Ellen said. I'll operate here. Ruth, I need you to assist. They worked through the night. Sarah arrived at 2 a.m., having heard about the attack on the news. She helped however she could, holding lights, passing instruments, keeping Liv from falling apart. And Frank stayed, kept watch, made sure the bear didn't return. At dawn, Phoenix stabilized. Ellen looked exhausted, but relieved. He'll live, but he can't be moved for weeks, maybe months. The hearing, Liv started, goes forward, Ruth said firmly. This changes everything. Frank's testimony, the bear attack, Phoenix's condition, it proves these wolves need you. That separating them would be cruel. That they're not just animals, they're family. She looked at Frank. You'll testify. Frank nodded. I'll tell them everything, the truth, all of it. Even if it means I go to jail. It probably does, Ruth said bluntly. I know. Frank looked at us, at Phoenix, breathing steadily now. Worth it. The sun rose on the most important day of our lives. And somehow, impossibly, we were all still alive to see it. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife Conference Room was packed, every seat filled, people standing along the walls, cameras in the back. Our story had gone viral overnight. The bear attack footage from a neighbor's security camera, Frank's confession, Phoenix fighting for his life. I wasn't there, of course. None of us wolves were. We stayed at the cabin with Ellen, who refused to leave Phoenix's side. But Liv told me everything later, and Sarah recorded it all. The review board sat at a long table, 5 people who held our fate in their hands. The chair, Douglas Mackenzie, was a former wildlife biologist in his 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much bureaucracy. Liv entered wearing Tom's old blazer, the one she'd kept in the closet for 3 years. Sarah walked beside her, visibly pregnant now, holding her mother's hand. Ruth followed in a sharp suit she hadn't worn since retirement, looking every bit the lawyer she used to be. And Frank Hutchinson came last, wearing his shame like a coat. Mackenzie banged his gavel. This emergency hearing is called to order. We're here to determine whether Special Wildlife Care Permit number 24 should be granted to Olivia Warren for the continued care of 4 gray wolves currently in her custody. He looked over his reading glasses at the crowd. I'll remind everyone this is a legal proceeding, not a public forum. Please hold your reactions. The prosecution went first, a Parks and Wildlife attorney named Jennifer Martinez, young and efficient. The facts are simple, Martinez said. Mrs. Warren has been illegally harboring 4 wild animals for over 4 months. Gray wolves are protected under state law. Private citizens cannot simply keep them because they want to. There are protocols, procedures, legal channels, all of which Mrs. Warren ignored. She pulled up photos on a screen. Us as pups. Us now. Clearly wolves. These are not domestic animals. They are ape predators with the capability to cause serious harm. Last night's incident with the grizzly bear, while traumatic, actually proves my point. These animals are dangerous. They attacked a bear. They defended their family. Someone shouted from the crowd. Mackenzie banged his gavel. Order. Martinez continued. The state has proper facilities for animals like this. Wildlife sanctuaries designed for wolves who cannot be released. The appropriate action is to transfer these animals to professional care. They'd be separated, Ruth said, standing. Your proper facilities are in 4 different states. These siblings would never see each other again. That's not relevant to... It's absolutely relevant, Ruth interrupted. Wolves are pack animals. Separation causes severe psychological trauma. You might as well euthanize them. Mackenzie raised his hand. Ms. Calloway, you'll have your turn. Please sit. The board asked questions. Cold, clinical questions about facility security, public safety, financial capability. Board member Linda Torres, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes. Mrs. Warren, your financial records show you're 3 months behind on mortgage payments. How would you afford the care these animals require? Liv stood, her hands shook, but her voice didn't. The crowdfunding campaign has raised $48,000, enough to cover my debt and the facility modifications you require. For now, Torres said gently. What about ongoing costs, food, veterinary care, inspections? I'll manage. Hush. The same way I've managed for 4 months, by doing whatever it takes. Board member James Patterson, older, stern. Mrs. Warren, why didn't you report finding these wolves immediately? Because I knew you'd kill them. That's not, isn't it? Liv's voice grew stronger. These pups were 3 weeks old, too young to survive alone. Too young to have done anything wrong, but because of what they are, because of their species, you would have killed them or locked them away forever for the crime of being born wolves. The room was silent. I'm not saying I followed the law. I didn't, but I followed something more important: compassion, humanity. The same thing that made me spend 40 years in an ER saving lives, and he lives. All lives. Because life matters. Sarah stood beside her mother. I am Sarah Warren, Mrs. Warren's daughter, 6 months ago. My mother and I barely spoke. I thought she didn't need me, that she didn't want me. Her voice cracked, but she was drowning in loneliness, in grief, in the belief that needing someone makes you weak. She touched her pregnant belly. These wolves, they gave my mother a reason to wake up every morning. They gave her purpose. They gave her family. And through that, she found her way back to me, to her real daughter, to her grandchild she'll meet in 4 months. She looked directly at Mackenzie. You're not just deciding whether to let her keep 4 animals. You're deciding whether to destroy a family, all of us. Because if you take them, you take her. And I just got my mother back. Then it was Frank's turn. He walked to the front, and I wish I could have seen his face. Liv said he looked 10 years older than his 58 years. The weight of guilt ages you faster than time. My name is Frank Hutchinson, he said. 3 years ago, I illegally killed a female gray wolf in Roosevelt National Forest. It was the mother of the 4 wolves Mrs. Warren is caring for. The room erupted. Mackenzie banged his gavel repeatedly. Frank continued over the noise. My son Dylan was killed by that wolf. He'd entered her den, gotten too close to her pups. She was defending her family. She did what any mother would do, what any of us would do. His voice broke, but I was angry, broken. I wanted revenge, so I killed her, and I left her 4 pups to die in the snow. He pulled papers from his pocket. This is Dylan's journal. His last entry. He wrote, Dad always says wolves are family creatures, just like us. If something happens to me in the wild, it's not their fault. It's mine for not respecting their space." Frank looked at the board. I dishonored my son's memory. I became what I thought wolves were, a killer without conscience. I spent 3 years hunting wolves, killed 12 of them, told myself I was making the world safer. Then I heard about Mrs. Warren, about how she saved 4 wolf pups who had no business surviving, and I knew they were the ones I'd left to die. So I tracked them down, not to hurt them, but to know if maybe, somehow, I could make something right. He placed the journal on the board's table. "Last night, I saved Mrs. Warren's life. I saved those 4 wolves' lives. Not because it makes up for what I did. It doesn't. But because my son would have wanted me to choose life over death, love over hate, family over revenge." "Mr. Hutchinson," Mackenzie said quietly, "you're confessing to multiple felonies." "Yes, sir." "You understand the legal consequences?" "Yes, sir. I accept them all. But before you charge me, I'm asking you to save the lives I tried to destroy. Let Mrs. Warren keep her family. They're not dangerous. They're loved. There's a difference." Ellen Rodriguez testified next, providing medical evidence. "These wolves exhibit extreme human imprinting. They were bottle-fed from 3 weeks old, socialized exclusively with humans, have no wild wolf behaviors. Releasing them would be a death sentence. They don't know how to hunt, how to survive, how to be wild wolves. They only know how to be Olivia Warren's family." Mark Stevens, the Parks and Wildlife Officer, gave carefully worded testimony. "In my professional assessment, these animals pose minimal public safety risk given the isolated location and demonstrated behavioral conditioning. Mrs. Warren's property is 12 miles from town, 3 miles from the nearest neighbor. Ruth presented character witnesses, 10 people from Netherland, former colleagues from Denver General, all telling stories of Liv's kindness, dedication, the lives she'd saved. Finally, Mackenzie called for recess. "The board will deliberate." 45 minutes. Liv said it felt like 45 years. They returned. Mackenzie looked tired. "We've reviewed all testimony and evidence. This is an unprecedented case with no clear legal precedent." He paused. The room held its breath. "The special wildlife care permit is granted." The room exploded, cheering, crying, chaos. But Mackenzie wasn't finished. "However, conditions apply. Extensive conditions." He read them. Facility modifications costing $25,000, annual inspections, educational component, no breeding. And Frank Hutchinson would be charged with illegal wolf killing, $10,000 fine, 6 months probation, community service. Frank accepted it all without hesitation. "Mrs. Warren," Mackenzie said, "you'll be allowed to keep your wolves. But understand this isn't a victory for breaking the law. It's an acknowledgement that sometimes the law doesn't account for love, for family, for the fact that relationships don't always fit into neat categories." He looked at her over his glasses. "Don't make me regret this." "You won't," Liv promised. Sarah called from the parking lot. Liv answered on a speaker so Ellen could hear. "We won," Sarah said, her voice breaking with joy. "Mom, we won." And Ellen, sitting beside Phoenix's sleeping form with Aria, Ember, and me watching, started to cry. We were staying. We were family. It was official. 6 months later, the first snow fell again. I stood on the porch of our cabin, not Liv's cabin anymore, but ours, and watched the flakes drift down through the pines. A year had passed since that terrible morning when we stumbled out of our den, motherless and dying, into a world that should have killed us. Instead, we found home. The cabin looked different now. Professional fencing surrounded a 2-acre enclosure, secure but spacious, room to run. A separate building housed the Netherland Wolf Education Center, complete with visitor area, classroom, and Ruth's office where she handled the legal and administrative work that came with running a nonprofit, because that's what we'd become, a registered educational facility. Visitors came 3 days a week, school groups and wildlife enthusiasts, learning about wolves through careful observation and Ellen's expert guidance. We were ambassadors for our species now, teaching humans that wolves aren't monsters, just families trying to survive. Phoenix had recovered, though you could still see the slight hitch in his gait when he ran. The broken ribs healed, but they left their mark. He didn't mind, wore his scars like medals, proof he'd fought a grizzly bear and lived. Aria had become the star of our education programs, calm, dignified, patient with the small humans who pressed their faces against the observation glass. She'd learned that being alpha meant more than dominance. It meant responsibility, protection. Ember surprised everyone by becoming a certified therapy animal, the first wolf in Colorado to earn that distinction. Ellen had trained her carefully, and now Ember visited a nursing home twice a month, bringing joy to elderly people who reminded me of Liv in those early days. Lonely, forgotten, just needing someone to care. And me, I was still the observer, the one who watched and understood. Ellen joked that I should write a book. If only she knew how much I actually comprehended. Phoenix trotted up beside me, his breath creating clouds in the cold air. Behind him, Aria and Ember emerged from the heated den, another modification. Climate control for Colorado winters. We'd been spayed and neutered, as the permit required. No breeding, no next generation. We were the end of our line, and I'd made peace with that. Some families don't continue through blood, they continue through impact. The door opened. Liv stepped out, moving slower than a year ago, but with purpose in every step. She was 68 now, and the year had been hard. The facility construction, the media attention, the constant inspections and paperwork. But she was alive in a way she hadn't been before, truly alive. "Morning, babies," she said, as she did every morning. We were hardly babies any more, full-grown wolves, massive and powerful. But to her, we'd always be the helpless pups she'd saved. Sarah's car pulled up the drive. She visited 3 times a week now, sometimes more. Her belly had grown huge in recent months, ready to burst with life. She waddled up the porch steps, Liv rushing to help her. "Mom, I'm pregnant, not dying." "You're carrying my grandchild. I'm allowed to fuss." They'd rebuilt their relationship slowly, carefully, like people learning to walk after being paralyzed. 40 years of distance doesn't disappear overnight. But they were trying. That's what mattered. Sarah had moved her marketing company's office to Netherland, worked remotely, stayed close. She'd taken over all our social media, Olivia's. Wolfpack had 2 million followers now. Our story had touched something in people, made them think about family, about love, about what really matters. Ruth's truck appeared next. She'd basically moved in, converting one of the cabin's spare rooms into her bedroom. "Too much space in my house," she'd said. "Too quiet. Rather be here where things are happening." She brought coffee for everyone and dog treats for us. We'd learned to tolerate the canine snacks. They weren't what we'd choose, but they made Ruth happy, and making Ruth happy mattered. Frank's beat-up Ford was last. He came every day now, part of his community service requirement, maintained the grounds, repaired fencing, handled the heavy work that Liv couldn't do anymore. He'd paid his fine, completed his probation, and could have left, but he stayed. "Someone's gotta keep an eye on you troublemakers," he'd say. But I knew the truth. He stayed because we were his redemption. Every day he spent caring for us was a day he honored his son's memory, was a day he chose life over death. This morning, though, something was different. Frank's face was tight with emotion as he climbed out of his truck. "I have something for you," he said to Liv. He pulled a cardboard box from the passenger seat, was cleaning out Dylan's room, finally ready to found these. Inside the box, photographs, hundreds of them. Dylan had been an amateur wildlife photographer. Frank explained. These were his best shots. Taken over his 17 years, Frank spread them across the porch. Mountains, birds, deer, and wolves. "He photographed your mother," Frank said to us, though we couldn't respond. He pointed to one image, a beautiful gray wolf, with 4 tiny pups nestled against her. 2 months before he died, he was tracking your family, trying to document the den. Tears streamed down his weathered face. He loved wolves, respected them. That's why what I did was so wrong. I betrayed everything he believed in. Liv took his hand. "You've made it right, Frank. Have I? Look around." She gestured to the education center. The enclosure. The family gathered on this porch. Dylan wanted people to love wolves. You've helped to create a place where thousands of people will learn to love them. That's his legacy. That's your gift to him. Frank broke down completely. Sarah hugged him. Ruth put an arm around his shoulders. And we 4 wolves, who should have died in the snow, pressed close to this man who'd killed our mother but saved our lives. Forgiveness is complicated. It doesn't erase the past, but it creates a different future. Ellen arrived at 9 for our weekly health check. She'd basically become part of the family, too, joining us for dinners, helping with the education programs, spending more time at the cabin than her own apartment. She had her father's medical bag now. Dr. Richard Coleman's old leather case, worn and loved. She'd shown it to Liv once, and they'd both cried. 2 people connected by your father, Ellen had said, 40 years apart, but still connected. That's the thing about saving lives. The impact never ends. Today's exam was routine. We were healthy, strong, well cared for. Ellen declared us perfect and went to join the others for coffee. I watched them through the window. This strange, beautiful family we'd created live, 68. Finally learning that needing people wasn't weakness. Sarah, 42, learning that her mother's strength came from fear, not from not caring. Ruth, 72, who'd lost her entire family and built a new one from broken pieces. Ellen, 47, honoring her father by saving the peace he would have saved. Frank, 58, turning his worst sin into his greatest service. And us, 4 wolves who bridged them all, who'd been saved and now saved in return. At noon, the first visitors arrived, a school group from Denver, 23rd graders with wide eyes and endless questions. Ellen gave her usual presentation. Facts about wolves' pack structure, communication, hunting behavior, conservation status. The children pressed against the observation glass, watching us with wonder. One little girl, maybe 8 years old, asked, "Do they love each other like a real family?" Ellen smiled. "What makes a family real at living together, taking care of each other, loving each other, even when it's hard." "Then yes," Ellen said, "they're a real family." The girl pressed her hand against the glass. Arya approached from the other side, matching palm to paw through the barrier. "My mom says family is who you choose," the girl said, "not just who you're born to. Your mom is very wise." At 3, the visitors left. We had the rest of the day to ourselves, our family time. Sarah made dinner. Well, tried to. Her cooking skills were questionable at best, but Liv supervised from a chair, walking her through the recipe. Their laughter filled the cabin. Ruth set the table. Frank brought wood for the fire. Ellen opened wine for everyone except Sarah, who got sparkling cider and complained about it. We lay by the fireplace, full from our own dinner, watching this miracle of humans who'd found each other through us. "I have news," Sarah said during dessert. "The baby's coming early. Doctor says maybe 2 weeks. Liv's face lit up. 2 weeks? We need to, there's so much to... Mom, breathe. We are ready. Have you decided on a name? Sarah looked at Frank. We want to name him Dylan, after Frank's son, if that's okay. Frank froze, fork halfway to his mouth. What? Dylan Thomas Warren. Sarah continued. Because second chances matter. Because family is who you choose. Because your son loved wolves, and now we're all connected to wolves. It feels right. Frank couldn't speak, just nodded. Tears flowing again. And, Sarah added, we'd like you to be in his life, as his grandfather, if you want. Frank's voice broke. I'd be honored. That night, after dinner, after the humans had gone to their beds, I stood on the porch again, the same porch where I'd stood that morning, watching the snow. But everything was different. Phoenix came out, bumped my shoulder with his. Remember when we were dying in that snowbank? I couldn't respond with words, but he understood my silence. Of course I remembered. Think we'd have made it without her? No, absolutely not. Think she'd have made it without us? That was the real question, wasn't it? We'd saved each other, not one-sided rescue, but mutual salvation. Arya and Ember joined us. We stood together, 4 siblings who'd survived impossible odds. The cabin door opened. Liv stepped out, wrapped in Tom's old coat, carrying a photograph. Couldn't sleep. She said she sat on the porch step, and we gathered around her. The photograph was Tom, young, healthy, smiling. I talk to you less now, Liv said to the image. Not because I love you less, but because I'm living instead of just surviving. You'd be proud. I kept my promise. She looked at us. I spent 3 years after you died just existing, going through motions, waiting for my life to be over. I thought that was strength, not needing anyone, not letting anyone in. She scratched Ember's ears. These 4 taught me different, taught me that needing someone is the bravest thing you can do, that love means being vulnerable, that family isn't about blood or species or any of the boxes we try to put it in. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She pulled out another photo, this one newer. All of us live, Sarah, Ruth, Ellen, Frank, and 4 wolves taken last month by a professional photographer. This is my family now, she said to Tom's image. It's weird and complicated and completely unexpected, but it's mine, and I'm so grateful. She stood, joints creaking. Come on, babies, let's go inside. It's cold. We followed her into warmth, into home. I took one last look at the snow falling in the moonlight. Exactly 1 year since we'd nearly died in weather just like this. We'd come full circle, but the circle wasn't closed. It was expanding. Dylan's baby would arrive soon. More children would visit our education center. More lives would be touched. Our story wasn't ending. It was just beginning. People ask what it's like being a wolf. I don't know how to answer because I've never lived as just a wolf. I've lived as part of something bigger, a pack that crosses every boundary humans think matters. My name is Silas. I am a wolf. I am a son. I am a brother. I am a teacher. But most importantly, I am home. And sometimes being home is all that matters. The fire crackled. The humans laughed. My siblings slept. And I closed my eyes, finally at peace, because we chose each other, and we kept choosing each other every single day. That's what family means. That's what love is. 2 weeks later, Dylan Thomas Warren was born, 8 pounds, healthy, perfect. Liv held him in the hospital, tears streaming down her face. Hello, grandson. I'm your grandmother, and I have 4 very special siblings for you to meet. The circle continued. Love always does. After 40 years of saving lives in the ER, retirement felt like death. The silence, the emptiness, the suffocating realization that nobody needed me anymore. My daughter had her own life. My husband was gone. I was just taking up space, counting pills and waiting for the end. Then 4 dying wolf pups stumbled into my parking lot on the coldest night of winter, and suddenly I had a reason to wake up, a reason to fight, a reason to live. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but maybe, just maybe, an old woman can learn to love again, to need again, to admit that needing someone isn't weakness. It's being human. My daughter and I hadn't spoken in 6 months. Now she visits 3 times a week. We're building what we should have had all along, a real relationship, built on truth instead of pretending to be strong. Those wolves didn't just save my life. They taught me that family isn't about blood or age or fitting into society's boxes. It's about showing up every single day, even when, especially when it's hard. What have you been too afraid to let yourself need? When did you last choose love over loneliness? Share your story in the comments below. We're all in this together.